Boom, boom! Yes, what a day or what a moment to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Wilbert Mutoko, and I'm so privileged today to bring you TJ. Taurai Jack is in the house. TJ, how are you?
I'm alright, how are you?
Beautiful, it's so nice having you, and we are having a fantastic conversation on property investment. Maybe you are there, you are an executive around Africa or around the world, and you are thinking of investing in property in South Africa. You want to know how it works. Maybe you are an entrepreneur, or probably you are a professional, or even an aspiring investor, whether you are a student or I don't know what you do, but that's the conversation we are going to have so that we can assist you to understand how does it work for you to invest in property in South Africa. TJ, you are most welcome.
Yes, sir.
Just in case somebody has not yet known Taurai Jack, if you are in South Africa and you don't know TJ or Taurai Jack, I don't know which property channels you are watching, but you are doing very well. And I want to encourage you to head over to look at TJ's stuff on YouTube. You will be amazed. TJ, I want to say you are one of the most authentic people that speak on property investment and growing businesses in South Africa. And it's such a privilege to have you face to face.
It's an honor being here.
Yes.
We've been having conversations for a long time.
Right.
So being here, it's a privilege. So thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited of what we're going to be talking to and who we're going to be talking to.
Right.
So that we can just help them where they are today, and they can grow to the next level.
Excellent stuff. And I was privileged to be interviewed by you for the TJ Tribe YouTube channel some time back, and I'm glad to be revenging today.
If I did it, you are didding me too.
I'm didding you too.
Yeah, there you go.
So TJ, somebody doesn't know you.
Yeah.
What would you say? Who is TJ?
So TJ is a very simple guy. So I'm a father of two, and I've been privileged to be a husband to one wife.
Right.
And I think my job is primarily to just look after them. And I think if we were to look at it from a biblical perspective, the Bible does speak about what a man should do. And those three things are potentially about, number one, leading the family, number two, protecting the family, and most importantly, to provide for the family.
Right.
And everything that I do is married around those three things.
Wow.
And property for me is currently a vehicle in terms of how do I provide for my family.
Right.
So hey, tomorrow property might not be working. I might be doing totally different because my mandate is just to provide.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's
Amazing.
me. That's me in a nutshell.
Beautiful stuff. Thank you so much for mentioning that. You are watching us. You are a boy. You are a man. I think that's a mouthful from TJ. A man is supposed to be there to make sure you lead, you provide, and you protect your family. We are not just doing this, but we want to make sure that charity begins at home, and then we can touch lives out there. TJ, while we are still talking about who is TJ, something interesting about you is the fact that TJ once worked in the corporate, and then he transitioned into becoming an entrepreneur, and the rest of the story goes. I think somebody will just be interested to, obviously they will watch some of your interviews in the past, but it'll be nice for them just to have an idea of your thoughts around, using someone's salary to actually use it as capital to veer into property investment.
Yes, so that's a very good question. So I want to speak to the point that, when people see me now, they assume that I've always been in this position, where there's always been money and you got business and it's running and it's doing well. But I've had a fair share of my own challenges growing up. At 3 months alone, my own biological mother dumped me. She ran away after she tried to sell me to some other people. And my grandmother kicked in at the time, and then eventually my grandmother couldn't. And I was put in a foster family and who have looked after me for all these years, and basically they're my parents now. Both of them are now late. But when I left home, I remember my foster father would say to me around about 16 and 18, you need to get a job. And I remember one day I was like, I'm done with this conversation, let me just leave. And I left and I found myself a job, and my first job was basically a janitor. So I went in and I started cleaning toilets. That was my first job. One of my uncles organized that job for me when he heard that I'd left home with no plan. He says, no, my Mzukuru, this is what needs to happen. I was in that job for maybe about a week, and they saw that I was a little bit clever, and they upgraded me to a messenger. From being in a messenger, in 2 months' time, I became some kind of like a receptionist, sort of, and I started rising up the ladder in a very short period of time. So I know how it is to be right at the bottom, because that's where I started off from.
Right.
And then eventually I had the privilege to come to Johannesburg, like many aspiring people. Johannesburg is a big place with many opportunities. And I came to Johannesburg, and my first job was working in a call center. I had an IT background at the time, and I was answering phones, you know. I used to work from around about 6 in the morning. There are different shifts at the time, so 6 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And I did that for a season, and I realized this is not what I want, there's more for me. Eventually, then I started studying change management, rose up the ladder. By the time I actually left formal employment, I was looking after the 11 markets for the group Barclays, which later on turned into ABSA, and that was my job there. But what I then realized, as and when I used to travel into Africa and looking after some of these countries, Zambia, Botswana, Uganda, Seychelles, I mean, you can check out to see which countries ABSA are. I used to manage all of those countries. What I realized was that when you're traveling business class, there are not so many people who travel business class. You start being acquainted with some of these people. So I used to fly to Ghana almost every other third week. I needed to be in Ghana for 3 weeks. And within that, I saw this other guy, and this other guy, first time I saw him by himself, we just greeted each other. Second, third time, he had his entire family with him. And I knew how much ABSA had paid for me for my flight. So I knew how much he had spent for his entire family. So I asked, what does he do for a living? And he says to me, he's in the property space. That's when the seed of property started.
Wow.
I came back home and I started looking, what can I do with property? Stumbled upon Robert Kiyosaki. And shortly before that, when I had gotten married, my wife had actually bought me the Robert Kiyosaki book, which I never read.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I did, yeah. And I never read that book. And now I'm speaking to my wife, I'm telling her, you know, this guy about Robert Kiyosaki, and my wife says, but I bought you his book. So I'm like, oh, okay. And bingo, I went into my cupboard, looked for the book, and that night I read the whole book until around about maybe 11-ish the next morning, and it was just so gripping. But I don't want to say that the book was gripping. I was ready.
You were hungry.
Yes. And I think there's that whole thinking of when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. And within that, if you understand anything about the internet, the more you look for stuff, the more they start coming to you.
Right.
And many things started coming up for Robert Kiyosaki. Eventually we went into a class. From a class I then realized I have something powerful, which is a pay slip. But in the same breath, I had been, or should I say I had started doing business at the time. I understood the power of the pay slip. But I had also the opportunity of buying a farm at the time, which was also making not any money at the time. And actually at the time, we were going downhill. And the bank was actually calling in to say, look, we can repossess you here. And because I was working for the bank at the time, I think it saved me because they put in wellness program in the workplace to sort of like help you. So given that, I knew the power of the payslip, but my personal position at the time didn't allow me to use that payslip. But fast forward a little bit later, after I sorted out this problem with the farm and so on, the payslip can be something that anyone can utilize if one has affordability. And when I'm talking about affordability, is that many of us, what happens is that when we get a payslip, you're getting paid, let's say 100 grand for the month. We chase that target. I'm earning 100,000, so my spend is 100,000. So which means that by the time you go to the bank will like, oh, okay, you earn so much money, but if you were to get a loan for anything, there's no affordability to pay back. So for that reason, we can't give you anything. So a good example would be someone who's earning 100,000, but they're only spending 50,000. The bank is willing to give them plus minus 4 million on any investment that they would like to make because there is affordability. So the banks wants to see that. And this is something that I didn't know and I had to learn along the way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. TJ, one of the things that fascinates me about you is your history that you just mentioned.
Right.
To say your mom left you and then foster parents took over.
Yeah.
But you rise to become this great man that we know as TJ today.
Right.
Impacting several thousands, millions of people across the world.
Right.
What is that one secret? I know one of them is God. That one I'm assured of.
Right. So
I know one of them is God.
Yeah.
What is the other thing that keeps you going? Because if I look at you and I didn't know your story, but I just see your level of success. Because I mean, it might help someone who is watching you for the first time to know how many units of property that sit under you at this juncture. Somebody may understand what we are talking about. From someone, probably someone is making excuses right now.
Yeah.
To say I was born in a poor home, my dad is poor, my mother is poor, or I grew up in the rural area, or you know, we always have excuses.
Yeah.
But here you are, you have gotten to this place. What are some of the things you could say to the people before we move forward?
So there's a great story of a guy called Joseph that I kind of like related at a young age. And for some of you who are not Christians, go and read in the Bible. There's a story of a guy called Joseph. And basically he's dumped by his brother after, you know, God has given him this vision of what he was going to become. He didn't understand it himself or what it was. But so many tribulations happened. And eventually he saved the people within the area where he was staying in. Now, there's nobody who's coming to save us.
Right.
I think from all the African countries, South Africa is probably one of those markets where we get these grants and people tend to survive on them and things like that. And we assume that the government is going to come and save us. But there's nobody who's going to save us. We ourselves, as individuals, we need to figure out what am I good at and how can I make sure that I can put food on the table.
Right.
That's the primary reason for our existence, putting food on the table. The second one is that how can I help those that are around me, which is your family?
Right.
And then the third one is how can I impact the community?
Right.
And we all have different sorts of gifts that is already embedded with us. So sometimes it's not even about education. I've met people that are not educated in the property space who are doing amazing stuff. Neither am I saying that don't go to get educated. Strike the balance. So for me, I think what drives me the most, it's simple. I've got a mandate God has given me. He's put me on the earth for the purposes of creation. I need to do. Creation is doing. Right? That's the first one. Then the second one is that I have people that are dependent on me.
Right.
And those individuals they start with my family first. And right now there is other kids that I've never met and might never meet. And we pay school fees for them.
Wow.
But they're dependent on the work that we are doing. So I think what then pushes me is all of these people are looking forward to, if this guy doesn't do it, we have no life.
Wow.
And I think as a man, if you're to think of it that way all the time, you will wake up in bed.
Right.
You will ask, how can I get help? Yeah.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much, TJ, for mentioning that.
Hey, my friends, I'm very sorry that I have to disturb the amazing conversation that is happening. But I thought, let me just jump in here and give you a little bit of a good word of a service that I utilize, which is called Expelo. You might have never heard of them before, but basically what Expelo is, all of us who are here, we do property investments. And as and when we do property investments, we have properties that we have and we take insurance on that. And we also have tenants that we've got. And at some point, these tenants tend not to pay. It's a reality in our market. At a national level, they generally say around about 20% of tenants fail to pay. If they fail to pay, what is the recourse? You probably now need to evict them, isn't it? And the cost of evicting anybody, even the going through of that process, can be extremely tedious. And my friends, that's where Expelo comes in. I utilize Expelo myself in all my properties that I've got. The Expelo company, what they basically do is that I said to myself when I was trying to explain this to my wife the other day, and I said to her, babe, Expelo to us is the big brother that we pay on a monthly basis, and as and when we ever have a delinquent tenant, a tenant that is not paying, we can always call on Expelo, and they will do the eviction for us. We don't need to worry about it. They'll handle all the legal fees. They will do everything in ensuring that this tenant is evicted. So my friends, I just thought that it is unfair of me not to share with you this information. So on the screen right now, it's the details of basically how you can reach out to Expelo and you can claim your discount. Well, you might not be able to get the entire link because it's on the screen, but if you have to click in the description of the video, you'll be able to see the same link that is in here that says expelo.link/TJ Tribe, and that's to get you your discount. So my friends, don't be caught with your pants down with your tenants and they become delinquent and you fail to evict them. Just go to Expelo. But for now, let us go back to that interesting conversation that we were having. Thanks for watching.
Now, let's go into the property talk. I just got more and more interested. I know your story, but I never get tired to listen to it because it's super inspirational. I was telling my daughter before you came that TJ is coming. TJ is a big boy. Right. I call you one of the big boys. So yeah.
I think I'm just being a good steward of what God has put in our space.
Wow.
And I think that's what we are ought to be. I think then we label ourselves all these names, big boys and whatnot. But the fundamentals of who we are and what we should be is we are all given gifts.
Right.
Those gifts might translate into money. And then on top of that, we all have the ability to be stewards.
Right.
And again, the story is somewhere in the Bible, and it relates to today's life.
Yes.
The more you are a good steward, there's just more doors that's going to open for you.
Right.
So we speak of the salary that you can present at the banks. The more you are looking after everything that you're paying for, the more the banks are going to give you more money.
Yes.
Simple. So you're being a good steward.
Right.
There's no... You don't have to pray, fast, see sangoma, no tokolosh, nothing. It's simple mathematics. You're given X, look after it, make it more, and then those that are giving you will give you more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. I like it when you mention that there is nobody that we should wait for to come and help us. And Attorney Arthur Marara wrote a book called No One Is Coming.
Right.
And that exactly resonates with what you're saying.
Right.
Okay, so let's look at what are the current trends and opportunities in the South African property market that investors should be aware of.
I think trends, it's a gimmick in my view, that us who are now educated, we want to go in and to look into, is there a trend and how should I be making money out of the trend? I don't think that if you're jumping into this for the purposes of serving yourself and serving your family members, we should be looking at it hard, right? My view is that in a bad economy, in a good economy, there will always be opportunities.
Right.
Now, some of these opportunities do not present themselves as opportunities. They actually present themselves as problems.
All right.
Now, I'm of the view that as entrepreneurs, our primary goal is how should we go out there and identify problems?
Right.
Once we identify a problem, then we say to ourselves, how best can I make sure that I can present a solution and monetize the solution? Now, that might not be trendy at the time, but you're making money out of it. I'll give you a very good example. In South Africa, we've got an area that's called Berea. Everybody speaks of Berea in Johannesburg.
Right.
And a few years ago, Berea became trendy.
Right.
Why? Because there was one single bank that said, if you are willing to go into this market, we can back you. But there was no any other bank that was willing to.
Okay.
So guess what happened? If you had to drive around in Berea today, you're going to see many billboards that says, sponsored by TAF, sponsored by TAF, sponsored by TAF. And the problem there was the town was decaying. It was going on a decay. Towns do go on a decay. Every town can do that. But in the same breath, a town can turn. It turns because the investors have gone in. They are now buying these properties at, let's say, 200,000, renovating them, putting in value. People come in and rent for maybe 5,000, and now everybody is doing that in the same neighborhood. So the town now turns. Sunnyside in Pretoria became that, Arcadia in Pretoria became that for a season. Now, when we speak about trends, somebody who is sitting elsewhere might think, let me go in now to Berea. But what you're seeing now is that the data is now available. But the data is now available because somebody has already started. And I'm of the view that when the British came through to Africa, there was no data that gold was there, right? Or any of the other colonizers that we had.
Okay.
There was no data that this thing, but they were just pioneers. They came through and they're like, what is there? Potentially there's X. And how much money was siphoned to the Europeans? So much money, right? And I think that's the spirit of entrepreneurs that we should have. It's great to look at trends, and I'll give you a little bit of trends, but for many people that know me, I personally actually don't like to give you trends.
Okay.
Because you're just going to be like, oh, TJ student accommodation said it works. And then you're going to try to do it in a certain neighborhood and it doesn't work. And you're like thinking, but that guy lied to me. So let's give you the tools on how best you can identify trends. Number one, there's a problem. Are you solving that problem? At the moment in South Africa, we've got one of our biggest problems of, we are one of those African countries where universities have spiked.
Right.
So we have more universities that have come up. The government is planting more universities. And in the same breath, we have a bigger population of students going into universities.
Right.
So which basically means that if you're to look at that, there's a slight problem there. Housing for those students. Now, many are campuses that are built, they do have student rates, but many students don't actually want to stay there. Why? Because they're not being serviced nicely, or maybe they're not enough. So the opportunity, trendy opportunity for you and me is let's jump into student accommodation.
Right.
But because it is trendy, go and learn the second point of what is trendy. Go and learn that trendy thing. Because it might be trendy in the market, but when I'm now doing it, I'm not making the money that everybody else is talking about, right? Does my area allow for this trendy thing that we're talking about? Somebody else who stays maybe a kilometer from the university could make more money than someone else who's 5 kilometers away. Right. So now we have spoken about the trend, but the intricacies of the trend now is someone else could make or might not make money.
Right.
So, number one, we did say that student accommodation is trendy in South Africa right now. So the bottom line of what you need to do, what anybody can do, is follow the universities. The universities are being planted, they're being announced, it's public information. So go and see in that area, is there student accommodation? And if there's none, buy your property, go and learn how student accommodation works. So that's student accommodation. It is trendy. It's been trendy for the last maybe 5 years or so.
Right.
And I can also safely say that because there's lots of data around universities openly saying that we have this problem. So again, what does an entrepreneur do? See the problem and solve for it. Right. We've also seen a lot of people migrating from the big metros, going into smaller towns. Why? Because during COVID, we had this hybrid of work. So just yesterday alone, I was asking my wife, where is Wellington? And that's a smaller neighborhood or town just outside Cape Town. And they were saying that in Wellington, the prices have boomed. Now Wellington, it allows for, it's a quiet town, good for retirement, but it's also have good infrastructure. But the prices compared to Cape Town, the prices are a little bit less. So which means that in that area they've seen a spike. So why is there a spike? Because people that are looking for alternative accommodation outside Cape Town, outside the big metros, they are now finding, oh, Wellington actually works. For the same price market, we can get a bigger place.
Right.
So we've been seeing that across South Africa in different towns, people are moving back. I want to call it moving back home. But again, COVID is gone. So many companies now are also now calling back their resources to say, come back. So is it still a trend? One could argue to say that it's still a trend. Converting commercials into residential, that's been a thing in South Africa. Because if you're to really look at the fabric of many towns, you get to see people that are working in a certain hub, and they stay in a certain township which is maybe about 60, 80 kilometers away.
Right.
But these days, segregation is done, right? We are 30 years into democracy, so you're beginning to see more and more people now working across gender, across race, and also staying together.
Right.
But these new buildings that we're talking about, it allows for anybody to stay in it. Whether you're young, whether you're old. And so this is some of the other trends that are happening. Development has always been a thing. But I also want to conclude this topic by saying, whatever that's trendy, number one, there's data around it. At what point, because the trend goes up and then it falls, right? So at what point are you jumping onto that trend?
Right.
That's the first thing. Because you might be coming in at a peak, and then you lose money. It's like going into Perea today, and everything is now at prime, right? The second thing is that when you're seeing these trends, and this is, for me, this is very important. When you're seeing the trend, do you believe in that trend?
Right.
So for instance, student accommodation, is it something that you can do? Do you actually believe that this is a problem? Do you actually think that you can invest in that? Because knowing a trend is one thing, but having it in your heart to back it is another thing.
Right.
So you can't put money into something that you don't believe in. So for me, once you believe in it, then go and learn around it, which is a fair thing. Learn on it before you start putting money on into it. The moment you learn on it, you're basically removing the risk
Right.
away from it. And once you remove the risk, then you can make money.
Right.
And for me, that's good trend.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Beautiful. You remind me of Warren Buffett
Yeah.
when he says, when you see everybody jumping in, it's time to stay away. When you see
Right.
people afraid, it's time to jump in. I know it's not something that everybody follows, but many times it works because, especially with the trends, like you are saying, somebody will, you say what? Beria.
Berea, yeah.
Come in.
Yeah.
But people are already coming out of the market and you are
There you
jumping
go.
and you could be in trouble. So knowledge, they say knowledge is power.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So from your perspective, what is the best way to incorporate a property investment in a property investment firm in South Africa? Should it be a trust, a company? I know that some people invest in their own names as well, but in many of your videos, you have told us that it's important for you to incorporate rather than, running it in your personal name. I know many of us, myself included, we start off, you get some land, you build something, it's in your name, and you're proud of it, but Kiyosaki teaches us differently.
Well, it's that whole education that we got right from when we were small. Ownership is important.
Yes, you put your name
Yeah.
on your book, on your
that's
shoes,
it.
on your pen.
That's it. And unfortunately, you can't go at a braai with other people and tell them that you own something when your name is not there, right?
Yeah.
And we have to unlearn that. I had to unlearn that when I understood that control is more powerful than ownership.
Right. Control is more ownership than, it's more important than ownership.
There you go. So control is more important.
I have to be a good student.
Yeah.
Control is more important than ownership. Please
100%.
type in the comment section.
Right.
Let's see whether you're following.
There you go. So what do I mean by that? Yes, in our many videos we speak about, remove the risk away from yourself as a person, because many of us don't have money to buy these properties in our name. We are actually dependent on banks, right? Now, once you start getting married to a bank on a 20-year loan, whatever lending mechanism it is, there's already an inherent risk.
Oh, yeah.
And this inherent risk now is, if things go wrong, they're coming after you and your name. Now, that's the biggest reason why we say, don't invest in your name, don't buy in your name. So then the question is, TJ, so how should I buy? Right. Now, there's also another big reason. The other big reason is a tax. Now, the more you have ownership in your name, the more the government is going to hit you with tax.
Right.
Personal tax is far much greater than company tax, right? So if you understand those two, then you might already start to figure out, where am I going? Always buy in companies. Right. Now there's many a type of companies. For today's purposes, let's just say it's a company. And this is a private company that we're talking about. Now, I want us to speak. You did say that today we're talking to this guy who's a young executive and so on. Many employers, once you get to that level, they actually don't want you to be starting your own business and things like that. And for that reason, I always say to people, look, you have a family and this family is dependent on you. That's number one. Number two, you want this family to sustain their lifestyle that you've created for them today. So how best do you do that? The first thing is that take your entire family, irrespective of how complicated it is, whether you've got kids outside, kids inside, don't matter, but make sure that you have incorporated all of your kids together with your wife. You've got like Jacob Zuma who's got multiple wives, no problem, put all of them in one. And then go through and have a conversation with an attorney, and then create what is called a trust.
Right.
In the trust, you're going to have two offices. The first office is the trustees. Then you and your wife can become a trustee. The second one is that the second office is beneficiaries. Beneficiaries are the real owners of the trust.
Okay.
So which means that these beneficiaries, they now own the trust. They will have the benefit from the trust. The trust is now going to own the company,
Right.
100%. Your investment, your borrowing is going to be in this company.
If you're in property investment, at some point or the other, you have had to evict someone. And I know, my friends, it is a painful exercise. But I'm here to tell you that for the last couple of years, I've been using a company that is called Expello. Expello, basically what they do is that you pay them a monthly fee, and over and above that, whenever you get a delinquent tenant, they will come and evict that individual free of charge, because obviously you've been paying, right? And over and above that, you don't have to do anything. But guess what? I have managed to organize a good price for you. And the link here that you're seeing, which is called expello.link./TJ Tribe, gets you a great discount from Expello. So my friends, don't be caught with your pants down on your tenant. Just Expello them with Expello. It is TJ. Let's go back to the video.
Which means that if something is to happen to you today, God calls you and you go and see Jesus, or you are disabled, you're not able to work, all of the properties that you've been buying in the company can now continue to give you cash flow and can sustain your livelihood. Right. But if you then die, there is no estate because you didn't own anything, and everything is already within the structure. So everything is just going to continue like that. Now this whole conversation about a will, about the estate taking X percentages from your estate, all of that goes away with the structure.
Right.
So I'm a huge advocate of the trust, having your family members in the trust, including yourself, having the ownership of the trust, the company's ownership in the trust, and then you operate in the company like that.
Right.
And anyone else who is locally based, you can do that.
Right.
Anyone who is internationally based, you can now do that.
Right.
And with that now you can start dancing with the banks for funding and things like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. This trust, can it be done by anyone, or it's very expensive to maintain? It needs only rich people?
I think it's a myth that the trust is expensive.
Okay.
I think what is expensive is the ignorant of not having one.
I see.
Yeah.
Are you listening?
And here's the reason, brother. If I'm to take you today, you just worth, let's say, 10 million today. And if you are to die, you've got 3 kids and your wife. And you die today and your affairs were not sorted out. The chances of 55% of all this money in South Africa right now, from a law perspective, all of that is going to go to the government in different taxes.
Right.
Just you dying. And then the 45% is now left for your 3 kids and your wife. Now I'm saying, if you are to have the same amount of money in a trust and in a company, and you die, same effect, your family still inherits or progress with this 10 million.
Right.
Now, setting up a trust is plus minus 15,000 rand. The good attorney, you can even get it at a more affordable rate.
Okay.
Managing it, it's simple. It's like any other entity. You need an accountant to do the books every other month.
Right.
You need a bank account these days with so many banks that are there. They can even offer you a 0 transaction fee account. So protecting this 10 million versus plus minus 15,000 spend, it's a no-brainer to me.
Right.
I would rather save up 1,000 for the next 15 months, but start the conversation with an attorney to say, this is what I want to do. Can you open up an account for me? I'm going to pay. And only when my trust is out and I've finished paying, that's when you can give me my trust.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
So you're making plans, and that's what we are called to do as entrepreneurs. Finding ways on how to do these things. Let's not get stuck because we don't have the money today.
Right. Amazing. Thank you so much for that. So I think that clarifies the fact that sometimes we just hear about trust and you think, oh, it's for the rich people.
Right.
But honestly, 15,000, it can be done. If you don't have 15,000 there and then, you can find a way, as long as you use an attorney who probably is more experienced in that, I guess.
100%.
I don't think it's every attorney who should do that.
Yeah.
And
an attorney, an accountant, those two people can open up a trust for you.
Perfect. Perfect. And TJ is highly experienced in these things, so you can hit him up. He will give us his dials towards the end of the interview, and you can hit him up, and he will assist you or link you up with the right people. All right. So, can foreigners buy land in South Africa? Can they buy properties in South Africa? Both those that are living here and those that are living abroad, because I know many people, some might be here and one day they will move out and they don't know what to do with their properties. Some are in the diaspora and they want to invest here. Foreigners or expatriates, welcome to purchase land here.
I think, again, it's one of those myths that people think that this can't be done or it's complicated. I think people just don't read carefully. There's nothing that is not written out to say you can do it this way. We just a bit lazy in terms of getting it to understand it. I've been a foreigner in South Africa, and I want to speak to a foreigner who stays in South Africa. Then we jump on to the next foreigner who's not resident here. The South African foreigner, depending on your paperwork, you may have a permanent residence, you may have a work permit, whatever permit that you have, it allows you to go and buy property. Many people do that.
Right.
Having said that, not all the banks may be favorable to you, maybe because of your circumstance, and many of us we want to label, because I'm a foreigner. No. Try to understand each bank, when they are liaising with you, there is a banker, and that individual will tell you why that application has been declined. Right. If it's about your paperwork, they'll tell you, this is the reason about your paperwork. Or maybe it's not about your paperwork, it's actually about your financial affairs.
All right.
Right? So let's separate the two. But from the get-go, for as long as you've got a permit of sort, you're allowed in South Africa to buy real estate, whether it's a piece of land, whether it is a block of flat, whatever it is, you're allowed to. There's many African foreigners, European foreigners. Actually, to tell you something, there's a law that came in the early 2000s. And this law, basically, they introduced it to say foreigners who are not domiciling in South Africa, meaning that they don't stay in South Africa, they now need to put in 50% deposit when they are buying.
Right.
That reason came in because a whole lot of properties in the coastal land of the Cape Town, and I'm just talking about Western Cape as a whole, was being owned by foreign nationals. So then they said, okay, fine, how do we protect our real estate? So let's give him 50%. So it's kind of like just giving them a hindrance, but if you look at the pound power or the dollar power, they can still afford to come and buy in South Africa. So number one, a foreigner who is staying in South Africa, you got your papers correctly, you can go and buy real estate. Robert Kiyosaki says there is a couple of ways of becoming a millionaire, and the first one that he always says is, if you want to become a millionaire, just go and marry a millionaire. Right? So if you don't have papers, just go and marry someone who's got papers.
Who has papers?
Right. And then you will buy your real estate thereafter. Now, from there, let's also speak about the foreigner who does not stay in the country. How best can they buy real estate? They can. The short answer is you can.
Okay.
Can you buy cash? 100%. There's no restrictions of any nature. Again, if you do have your trust, you've got your company, which I advocate for. And the reason why I advocate for that is that let's assume you bring in, let's say, 10 million rand into the country for real estate. You're coming from Botswana or wherever you're coming from. And you buy this real estate. I am of the view that as someone who is coming from Botswana, you probably don't want to leave Botswana. You're doing this for investments in a different country.
Right.
So if you're to do this in your company, you can then employ the local South African to be your managing director, and they can work and manage these properties for you. You can employ professional property managers in your company, and everything is very clear. They are working for company ABC. There's this 10 million that has been invested by the biggest shareholder, and it's clear. You're running your business in a very clean manner. But what about if you don't have this 10 million? You only have 1 million, and you are reliant on the bank. Well, the current rules stipulates that if you're to come into the country as a foreigner, the bank will only give you up to 50%.
Okay.
So which basically means that you now need to have the other 50% in cash. You're buying a 2 million rand property for investment purposes in this company. You need to have your 1 million cash, and the bank will be happy to give you another million.
Okay.
Now, are there different ways of working around that problem? There's plenty of them.
Right.
I mean, the first one that we just spoke about in a very joking manner is, you know, if you want to become a millionaire, just marry a millionaire. You can go into partnerships with local guys. There's many guys who would be interested in doing that. And all of a sudden now you are jumping from 50% to 100%. And depending on how you're going to put this together as a business structure, that's neither here nor there. It's a willing investor, willing partner conversation. So it's not a hindrance. That's what the law says, but there's many ways of dealing with it.